Syracuse has a quarterback conundrum, and honestly, I don't know what the right answer is.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're always free and available wherever you get your podcast, whether you're watching right now on Locked On Syracuse or listening on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, should Syracuse football move on from defensive coordinator Elijah Robinson? We'll talk about that later on in the show. Also, after the bye week, Syracuse football takes on Pitt. That is a must-win game for Syracuse. We'll explain more on this podcast. But we're going to start by once again talking about the quarterback situation for Syracuse football and how when you really dive into it and you look at all the pros and cons, I don't know if there's really a right answer for what Syracuse should do at this point in time at quarterback. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. And before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We have now had multiple days to reflect on Syracuse's loss to SMU. We have had multiple days to talk about Syracuse's quarterback situation. I certainly had my thoughts on the post-game reaction show. You guys then chimed in. We did a whole podcast with the fan takes and responding to all your comments that you had about Syracuse's quarterback situation. And so after giving this a lot of thought and going through both sides, I've honestly come to the conclusion that at this point in time, there is really no right answer for Syracuse football. It's not as simple as they need to stick with Rickie Collins or they absolutely have to switch to Luke Carney, because both sides, as we're about to go over here, have very, very valid reasons for either sticking with Rickie Collins or perhaps making the change to Luke Carney. So let's go over it. Let's go with the pros of perhaps sticking with Rickie Collins as the quarterback one for Syracuse, at least for the Pitt game. We'll see what happens after that. Number one, it gives Rickie Collins more time to develop in the off chance that he actually really improves and becomes a really good quarterback for Syracuse. Again, it's a very slim chance. I highly doubt this happens, even though Pro Football Focus thinks that Rickie Collins is apparently one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. Shout out to Pro Football Focus for being a complete scam, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, in case you missed it, they gave Rickie Collins a 75 grade for his performance against SMU. It should have been maybe a 45 at best. That's how bad he played, but that's neither here nor there. Who cares about that, right? Number two, if you stick with Rickie Collins, you do preserve the redshirt year of Luke Carney. So that's not just thinking about 2025, but that's thinking about long-term here and wanting to keep that extra year of eligibility for Luke Carney. And number three, whether we're happy about it, or I'm sure we're not going to be happy about what I'm about to say here, but what if Rickie Collins is currently the best option on the roster? What if Rickie is the best quarterback on the team right now that is healthy? Because Steve Angeli is not coming back. We know that. And Fran Brown, at least in the past, has always seemed to demonstrate that he will play the player that he believes gives his team the best chance to win. He's played true freshman before. He's playing true freshman this season. Why isn't he all of a sudden making the change to Luke Carney? Could it be because he honestly believes that Rickie Collins is better and that Rickie Collins gives his team the best chance to win? I'm essentially saying that maybe the backup is worse. We don't know, right? All we know right now is that Rickie Collins is not very good. We don't know much about the alternatives beyond Rickie Collins. But that's where we get into the con of sticking with Rickie Collins, which is that we know he's not very good. We know there is a very off chance, it's a very remote chance that he's really able to turn this around. I mean, you look at the schedule coming up and the competition that he's going to have to face. You're telling me that all of a sudden he's going to get so much better to the point where he can actually lead Syracuse in these games and help them potentially win games? I just sincerely doubt that is going to happen. And so at this point, it feels like 2025 is just going to be a mulligan year. It's as if the year didn't happen. Steve Angeli got hurt, and that was the season. It was over when Steve Angeli got hurt. They got their upset win against Clemson, and we'll be looking back at 2025 and saying, what if Steve Angeli stayed healthy the whole year? That's what it feels like with Syracuse sticking with Rickie Collins, which is why many of you are probably on the side of, well, let's switch to the new quarterback and see what happens. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the pros of switching to Luke Carney. Luke Carney is the backup quarterback currently of Syracuse, a true freshman out of Texas. He won 4 consecutive state titles in high school while with Texas, or in the state of Texas. How about that? Okay. Number one, Carney gets experience. Now, I've said before that not all experience is good experience, but maybe it could be good experience. We don't know for sure, but at least he will get actual playing time against legitimate competition, not just, one play against Colgate, right? True freshmen, they can succeed at quarterback. Yes, I'm pretty hesitant to put a true freshman out there because I want to make sure that the true freshman specifically at quarterback is ready to play. But I don't know if you all were following along the Pitt game against Boston College. I understand it's Boston College, but they started a true freshman quarterback. I'm, of course, referring to Pitt. That guy seemed to do okay. Let's just put it that way. He was fine. Cal, I believe, is also going with a true freshman this year. He seems to be doing fine. He's got some growing pains too. But true freshman quarterbacks can succeed in college football. It's sort of rare. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened enough in college to where you can make a switch to a true freshman and expect that the true freshman could be pretty good. In fact, I believe NC State did that last year with CJ Bailey, and CJ Bailey's pretty good. He's not amazing, but he's solid. He's okay. He certainly didn't seem like he was ruined by being out on the field last season. And number 3, it would give us a new sense of hope, a new sense of optimism if you switch to Luke Carney. Now, I'll admit it could be short-lived because we don't know how Luke Carney would actually perform. But temporarily, it would give us, the fans, and maybe more importantly, the team itself, a renewed sense of hope, a renewed sense of optimism that, hey, what is the mystery box that we got here in Luke Carney? Because that's what he is. He's a mystery box. We don't fully know. Perhaps he can be much better than Rickie Collins, and he might not be as good as Steve Angeli, but hey, maybe he can lead Syracuse to 3 more wins, which is what they need to make a bowl in 2025. That being said, let's go to the cons. If you were to switch to Luke Carney, or I should say if Syracuse were to switch to Luke Carney, what happens? Could burn the red shirt. And it would probably be a pretty unnecessary red shirt that it would have to be burned. Luke Carney has already played in 1 game this season, and it was for 1 play, but it still counts, and that was against Colgate, meaning he does get 3 more games he gets to play in before the red shirt would be burned. But still, if you were to, let's say, start him for Pitt and then start him the rest of the year, you could be burning his red shirt. Or actually, you would be burning his red shirt at that point. Number 2, there's no soft landing on the schedule. You can make an argument of North Carolina not being very good and Boston College not being very good. And you're right. Those teams are not very good. The problem with that is those teams are not stacked up next to each other on Syracuse's schedule. Are you going to sit here, or are we going to start Luke Carney for the game on Halloween against UNC, but then sit him the next few games until the season ender against Boston College because you don't want to play him at Miami and you don't want to play him at Notre Dame? Maybe you do want to do that with Luke Carney. That's fine if that is your approach. I'm just pointing out that there really is no soft landing because every game on the schedule from here on out is either an ACC game or it's that road trip to Notre Dame in November. So when you look at it, is there really a right answer here? Keep in mind also what I said earlier about Luke Carney, which is that is he better than Rickie Collins at this moment? Maybe the staff doesn't feel that he's better than Rickie. Maybe they feel that Rickie gives his team the best chance to win. And Rickie just isn't very good right now. And you got to hope that Luke can develop in a short period of time if he's really going to take over as the starting quarterback of Syracuse football. I just really don't see a right answer. I know earlier I was on the side of I think you got to stay with Rickie Collins, but I'm at the point where no matter what Syracuse decides to do, no matter what Fran Brown decides to do, I would support it because I really do see both sides. And I know that what I am doing is not exactly broadcaster 101. Broadcaster 101, how to get clicks, is to have a definitive, firm take, not to sit here and try to placate to both sides. But in this situation, I don't know what to do. Our starting quarterback suffered a torn Achilles. He cannot come back. The backup quarterback is not good at all. I don't see how he is really going to progress for Syracuse down the road, at least for this season. And the backup beyond him is a true freshman in Luke Carney. We have no idea what Syracuse has in Luke Carney. And I guess that's why many of you are saying they should switch to Luke Carney. But I'm just hesitant on it. I really don't know what the right answer is. Feel free to comment your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think is the right answer? I'd love your thoughts in the comment section below, but I'm at the point where Syracuse will just make a decision and I'm just going to live with it because I don't know what else really to do. But coming up, we'll talk about something else other than the quarterback situation. How about the fact that coming up is a must-win game for Syracuse? So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. In about 2 weeks, Syracuse football will take on the Pitt Panthers in what I believe is a must-win game for Syracuse. It is their last chance to be able to really get to a bowl in 2025. But let's rewind. Let's backtrack for just a moment here. All right. Where is Syracuse football at right now? They're at the midseason point entering their first bye of the year. They are currently sitting at 3-3. And if I told you before the year that Syracuse was going to be 3-3 at the midway point, I bet a lot of you would have expected that. Let's go through, I think, what many of us would have believed before the year would have been the win-loss splits for Syracuse through 6 games. Tennessee in week 1, while we were hopeful, while we were trying to be optimistic, most of us, I think, believed that Syracuse was going to lose that game. So they would be 0-1, just like they were after week 1. Then they would beat UConn, which they did. Then they would obviously beat Colgate, which they did. So they'd be 2-1. They would lose at Clemson instead of actually winning there. But then they would beat Duke at home for their 3rd win to go to 3-2. And then they would lose at SMU. So essentially, I think many of us would have expected that, or it would have expected to flip the Clemson and Duke results. So they would be 3-3. And right now they are 3-3, just not in the way that I think many of us expected they would come to this record. But as I pointed out yesterday in the Fan Reaction podcast, 3-3 is not exactly a good position right now for Syracuse. And I know Fran Brown saying in his post game that, 3-3 is not a bad spot. He actually made a mistake by saying that they're only one game off where they were at last year at the midway point. That's not true. Last year they were 5-1 at the midway point. But regardless, 3-3, not really a good spot for Syracuse. On the surface, yeah, all they have to do is do that again, and they make a bowl in 2025. But let's think about this for a moment. For the first time in the Fran Brown era, they are coming off back-to-back losses. First time they've lost back-to-back in the Fran Brown era was last week against SMU. And Syracuse last year, speaking of the bye week, they went 0-2 off a bye last year. Remember those games? You don't want to remember those games. So let's not talk about what happened with Syracuse after a bye. We'll talk about that in future podcasts. That'll be, I think, next week. Okay, next week. With all that said, Pitt after the bye is a must-win for Syracuse football. If Syracuse football beats the Pitt Panthers in a couple of weeks from now, they would be sitting at 4-3, and all this team would have to do, all they would have to do to make a bowl is beat North Carolina at home on Halloween, beat Boston College to close the regular season. And we would look at this year and say, you know what? Maybe this team could have been more. In fact, they probably would have been more had Steve Angeli not gotten injured. But at least they were able to salvage a bowl out of this season. I'm not going to sit here now and say that if Syracuse has a bad year from here on out, that it would kill momentum of the program, because I think many people know what's going on. They know that Syracuse's starting quarterback is not their actual starting quarterback. They understand. At least I would hope. At least I would hope the recruits understand that they have coming in for 2026. But could you imagine if they could actually pull this out and make a bowl this season? That would be nice. Why Pitt, though, specifically is that third win? Well, I'm glad you asked, because if Syracuse were to lose to Pitt, they would have to find a way to beat only one, but still, this is not going to be easy, at Georgia Tech, at Miami, good luck with that one, at Notre Dame, good luck with that one as well. So yeah, it's a must-win game for Syracuse. They absolutely have to beat the Pitt Panthers in order to make a bowl in 2025. And another problem, and we'll go over in future podcasts as well, is that Pitt owns Syracuse. Since the turn of the century, they own Syracuse football. I know we don't like that they own Syracuse football. I hate that they own Syracuse football, but we got to admit the truth here. The Pitt Panthers are 19-6 against Syracuse football since the year 2000. 19-6. They own this team. And last year was a disaster. That was coming off a bye, too. And Pitt's a pretty good team. But before I throw in the towel on the season and say that 2025 is over, I want to see if Syracuse can rise to the challenge and perhaps knock off Pitt on their home field in prime time. It would be nice. But if they do not beat the Pitt Panthers, this is not a bowl team at all in 2025. There is no way they are actually going to be able to make it. That's a definitive take for you all, ladies and gentlemen. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, coming up, this defense, coming off maybe the best performance they had all year, I'm still not sold on the unit, and I think by the end of the season, really just after the season, they're going to have to make a change with their defensive coordinator. I'll explain more next on Locked On Syracuse. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together, and when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you definitely don't want to miss because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I hope you put $5 on the Dallas Cowboys to beat the New York Jets because betting against the Jets, honestly, I think you might be able to make a career out of it. You might. I mean, the New York Jets are just terrible. The Jets' next game, for those that are very curious here, and I'm saying this, by the way, as a Jets fan, is in Europe. I think it's in London, actually. They're playing the Denver Broncos. I would put $5 on the Denver Broncos if this is your first bet because you never bet with the New York Jets. You always bet against them. You should be able to win that bet. Get yourself $300 extra to then use some more money to bet against my favorite football team in the New York Jets. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Locked on Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. Let's talk about Syracuse football's defense, shall we? And I want to preface this conversation by saying, think about this year and the big change that Syracuse made on its coaching staff heading into 2025. Rickie Brumfield is in his first year as the special teams coordinator of Syracuse. And I think we can all agree that Rickie Brumfield has done a very nice job with Syracuse with their special teams this year. They nearly recovered another onside kick, and this one was much tougher to recover. It was against SMU, of course, in the fourth quarter because this was not a surprise onside kick. This was a planned onside kick, and they nearly got it. They created the fumble that you want on an onside kick. This is a pretty good special teams. Rickie Brumfield has done a great job with Syracuse football. I mention this because change with the staff is sometimes good. It can be good. Now, I don't think that Syracuse needs to do anything with their offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon. In fact, I hope that Syracuse is able to keep him again this offseason because I'm sure there will be teams, whether it's in college or the pros, that are interested in him. I hope they can keep him, and I'm not going to let Rickie Collins not being good influence my opinion on Jeff Nixon. I know Jeff Nixon's a good offensive coordinator, but if you give him a terrible quarterback, he can do his best, but at the end of the day, if the guy can't make an accurate throw, he can't make an accurate throw. I don't know what you want him to do. If you can't hit a Darryl Gill that's wide open in the middle of the field for a touchdown, that's not Jeff Nixon's fault. But so I say that you don't need to change Jeff Nixon. You definitely don't need to change Rickie Brumfield, and you're certainly not changing the head coach and Fran Brown. Elijah Robinson, the defensive coordinator, he's got to go by the end of the season. I'm fine with giving him the rest of the year because I don't know really what good it does to fire a coordinator midseason in college. Like, I just don't see the point in doing that right now. But I'm at the point, yeah, it's time. And you might be confused. You might be surprised. Jackson, why are you saying this after what happened against SMU? SMU, that was a pretty good defensive performance, right? So you're going to now sit here and say that Elijah Robinson should be let go, that he should no longer be the defensive coordinator of Syracuse by the end of the season? I mean, Syracuse, they got an interception and a safety in the fourth quarter. They also had 9 tackles for loss. And for the first time all year, they actually held a team under 400 yards. And they held SMU to 76 rushing yards on less than 3 yards a carry. I say all those positive things to say this. They still allowed 31 points and 370 total yards. Even when the Syracuse defense is quote unquote good, we have to understand that it is by the Syracuse standard of good defense. In reality, this is a terrible defensive unit. You want to talk personnel? We could talk personnel all day. You want to talk coaching? I mean, that's what we're kind of doing right now, right? And we'll get to some personnel in just a moment and how Syracuse should approach on that front. But top to bottom, this is a really bad defense because even when they are good against SMU, they're not actually good. You gave up 31 points and 370 total yards. You didn't shut SMU down. You didn't. You didn't have to give up three consecutive touchdowns in the first half to go down 24-0. You didn't have to. This is not a very, very good defense. They are currently last in the ACC in yards allowed a game, and they are second last in the conference in points allowed per game. And it's not just this season that they are bad. They were also bad last year on defense. In 2024, 12th in the ACC in yards allowed. So that's bottom half of the conference. And they were 14th in points allowed per game. So they weren't good last year. And last year they had the following personnel. Ready for it? Fadil Diggs, Justin Barron, Elijah Clark, Marlo Wax, Clarence Lewis. And I mentioned all five of those guys because all five of them got legitimate looks in the NFL. Fadil Diggs was drafted. Was Marlo Wax drafted too, or was he an undrafted free agent? I can't remember off the top of my head, but all of them signed undrafted free agent deals right after the NFL drafted. They weren't drafted. They got legitimate looks in the NFL, which shows you that they have talent, right? They have talent to be able to get looked at by the NFL. Syracuse also had Murad Watson, who was a true freshman All-American defensive lineman, no longer with the team. He's with Texas. Deuce Chestnut and Devin Grant. A defense with that talent level that I just described should be, at minimum, an upper half defense in the ACC. That's at minimum. But really, that's a defense that should be top 5. Those players that I just mentioned, they got all conference, NFL pedigree. They do. And yet they were, 12th in yards allowed and 14th in points allowed last year. So they were not a good defense last year with better personnel. So it's not a surprise that now with worse personnel that they're an even worse defense. The good news is that they have 2 building blocks for the future that I feel very confident in. They're both true freshmen. Antoine Deslauriers, the linebacker, and Demetres Samuel Jr., the corner. Those 2 players need to be prioritized by Syracuse this offseason. I'm not going to sit here and say they should write them a blank check, but those 2 guys need to be the priority for Syracuse as far as their defensive personnel for 2026. As far as everyone else on the defense is concerned, it's kind of like what we just had with basketball after last year, where if the guy decides to leave, the guy decides to leave. And, I wish him nothing but the best, but I'm sure that Syracuse might be able to find someone who is at least capable of replacing whatever they're going to lose, because I don't know if they're very good in the guys that they are going to lose. And that players will hit the portal. It's inevitable in this day and age. But there's really only 2 guys that they need to prioritize this offseason. If you're wondering about Devin Grant, if you're wondering about Deuce Chestnut, those guys don't have years of eligibility. So I'm not going to include guys that are running out of eligibility. I'm just talking about some of the younger guys on this team right now. Those 2, Antoine Deslauriers, Demetres Samuel, they need to be prioritized. Everyone else, if they decide to leave, they decide to leave, and you look to either replenish from within or you go out in the portal and find someone else. That's where I'm at with the defense, but it all goes back to their defensive coordinator and Elijah Robinson. He's not good enough as a defensive coordinator, and Fran Brown has got to let him go this offseason, even though it might be hard for him to do that. He's got to let him go. So that just about does it. As far as what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future tomorrow, we'll talk more about the quarterback situation, but really the long term of the quarterback room. This is where we loop in the Steve Angeli injury timeline, perhaps. What should Syracuse potentially do this offseason? And we really just try to map out what Syracuse does at quarterback moving forward. At least now we've had 2 games to evaluate Rickie Collins, which is nice, right? And then on Wednesday, we'll do something that we haven't done in quite a while. And I don't know exactly what the topic will be just yet. I still have a couple of days to think about it. But we'll talk some Syracuse basketball here on this podcast because we're about a month away from the start of Syracuse basketball season. And like it's been in prior years, with the exception of last year, it's, you wait for the football season to reach its end and you start getting really pumped about basketball because, basketball team's supposed to be good. Now, as far as the basketball team this year, they could be good, maybe. That's what we'll talk about on Wednesday here on Locked On Syracuse. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present college football kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year, Derry Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse. I'll see you all again soon.